Tonight's cozy reading is a collection of original stories, written and read aloud for rest and quiet listening. These stories are meant to flow gently together with no interruptions, so you can simply relax and enjoy. Settle in, get comfortable, and let the stories unfold. I approached the entrance to the ruined delve, and the first thing my eyes fell upon was the lifeless form of an Imperial researcher slumped against the sand-covered stone. Dust clung to his uniform, collecting in creases and folds like he'd been lying there far too long. A small journal rested half open in his stiffened hands. Kneeling beside him, I brushed the grit away and eased the journal free. The notes inside were rushed, fragmented, ink-smeared, as though he'd been interrupted mid-thought or mid-flight. Mentions of a Dwemer craftsman named Razak. Whispers of unfinished machines that might think for themselves. The details were sketchy, but the implications were unmistakable. It seemed I wasn't the only one chasing the stories. My chest tightened, a knot of curiosity tangled with caution. The mystery of Razak had always lived in scattered rumors and half-believed tales, but now it sat in my palms, real, stained with danger. If I'd been alone, I might have hesitated. But then I heard familiar footsteps behind me. Claudia Falcon stepped into the dim torchlight of the ruin, looking exactly as she always had. Broad-shouldered, steady, carrying herself with the effortless confidence of someone born into her calling. The sword on her hip was as natural to her as her breath, and the quiet strength of a warden radiated from her with every movement. She'd always known who she was meant to be. I never had that certainty, while Claudia's path unfurled before her like some blessing of the divines. Mine had been a stumbling crawl of questions. Alchemy was the only craft that had ever come easily. Where others cursed the fumes and failures, I found understanding. I had once wondered if the shadows might claim me, but confidence had never sat comfortably on my shoulders, not the way it sat on hers. I heard the rumors, Claudia said softly as she joined me. Her gaze moved to the body. And then I heard about the researcher. Is this him? I nodded and held up the journal. Incomplete notes, hints of a construct that might think for itself. Whoever came before didn't get far. Razak, he came closer than anyone before him. An autonomous machine, one that could walk without a master's rod, without any city's command. Claudia frowned. That's exactly what the Imperials are after. A weapon that never tires, never questions orders, she said, her hand drifting to her sword hilt. I don't like it. Things built only for war. They never end well. I kept my eyes on the journal, my voice softening into something almost reverent. But imagine it not for war. Imagine what we could learn. To see Dwemer craft alive again. The fascination tugged at me, even as a sigh escaped. Still, power like this always draws the wrong kind of eyes. Claudia's expression shifted. interest threading through her concern. "Together?" she said. I gave her a small, determined smile. "Together," I returned. We stepped into the dungeon's entrance, stone chill creeping under my skin as the hum of dormant machinery echoed faintly through the corridors. Shadows stretched long, impatient ahead of us, and Razak's wheel waited with secrets it had guarded for centuries. As we moved deeper into the ruin, the corridors tightened into narrow stone arteries. Broken Dwemer spiders lay scattered across the path, their metal limbs twisted and gears stripped bare. Fresh oil glistened in the glow of Claudia's torch, too fresh for comfort. I crouched beside one of the fallen constructs, fingertips brushing the torn plating. "Someone's definitely been here," I murmured, the prickle along my spine sharpening. The damage was jagged, hurried, not the clean cuts of a trained blade. Something had torn through these, and recently. My hands drifted to the familiar weight at my hips, the twin daggers strapped against my belt. Their presence steadied me. I wasn't Claudia with her disciplined sword forms. My training was a dance of slashes, movement, timing, and chemistry. A single strike meant little without the right toxin burning along the edge. I slipped a few vials from a pouch and held them toward Claudia. "Coat your blade." She took them without question. As she worked, I uncorked a different vial of my own, a fast-acting paralytic, one of my sharper mixtures, and dabbed it along the twin edges of my daggers. A thin shimmer spread across the metal, the blades taking on a darker sheen. The faint alchemical fumes curled upward, subtle but telling. Claudia watched me with a half smile. "Those daggers of yours always make me nervous." "They make everything nervous," I replied, sheathing them again. The deeper we went, the more the air shifted, colder, denser, humming faintly with buried machinery. Every echo seemed too sharp, every shadow just a bit too deep. My hands hovered near my daggers as we moved, instinct guiding me into the loose, coiled stance Master Teldrin had drilled into me during training. Light on my feet, weight ready to shift. Daggers never gave you the reach of a sword. They demanded speed, precision, in the right moment. And if the right moment didn't come on its own, well, that's what the alchemy was for. Claudia stepped lightly ahead, scanning a long stretch of darkness. "Stay close. Whatever did this to the spiders might still be here." "Oh, I'm counting on it," I said quietly, fingers brushing the hilts of my blades. The ruin seemed to breathe around us, a slow exhale of ancient gears and forgotten secrets. And somewhere ahead, something was moving. The corridor opened into a wider chamber, its corners swallowed by shadow. Claudia raised a hand to halt me. Footsteps, not metallic scrapes, but boots. Claudia's jaw tightened. Imperials. My pulse kicked. They heard of the mystery of Razak. She shook her head. "If it's true, it would make a fine weapon." I slid both daggers free, the familiar weight settling into my palms like an old promise. The poisoned edges shimmered faintly in the torchlight. A voice called from the darkness ahead. "Identify yourselves." 3 soldiers stepped into view. Armor scuffed but functional, weapons drawn. Their eyes flicked from Claudia to me, and recognition sparked. "Adventurers aren't permitted in this excavation." The leading soldier barked. "Turn back." Claudia stepped forward, shield raised. "Then explain the dead researcher outside." They hesitated. It was their mistake. I moved first, not charging, circling, quick and low, slipping to the side where shadows pooled. One with daggers never wins by standing still. "Stop," the leader shouted, but he was too slow. I reached him just as he swung his sword. I ducked beneath the arc, the blade passing over my shoulder, and slashed upward across the gap in his armor. The paralytic on my dagger hissed as it bit into his skin. He choked, stumbling back. Claudia met the second soldier head-on, her shield smashing into his chest with enough force to rattle the metal. Her sword followed, cutting a sharp line across his vambrace. My poison would take longer through armor, but it would work. The third soldier lunged at me, spear thrust aimed at my ribs. I pivoted hard, letting it skim past me, then grabbed a vial from my belt with my free hand. I smashed it against the spear shaft as he yanked it back. A burst of shimmering dust blooming across the weapon. He coughed violently, his eyes watering. "Don't breathe too deep," I warned. He did, of course. His legs buckled. I darted forward and kicked him behind the knee, dropping him fully. A quick strike with my hilt finished the job. Across the room, Claudia fought like a storm given form. Her sword sang through the air as she parried, twisted, and drove her shield into her opponent's jaw. The soldier staggered, and I was already moving. I slid behind him, blades flashing. A double slash, fast, clean. The paralytic spread through his system. His body went rigid before he collapsed. The leader, still conscious but wobbling on his numb legs, raised his dagger in trembling defiance. You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you," I murmured, stepping in. I struck the pommel of my dagger against his temple. He sagged, unconscious. Silence washed through the chamber again. Claudia let out a long breath. "Well," she muttered, planting her sword point down. "That confirms it. The Imperials are here for Razak's secrets." "And they're deeper in," I said, wiping my blades clean. "These three were just the scouts." We exchanged a grim look. If the Imperials were clearing the path ahead, then the Dwemer machines we'd been warned about, the ones rumored to still function, they might already be awake. Claudia stepped beside me and touched my shoulder. "Ready?" Fear, curiosity, and alchemical fire tightened in my chest. "Always." We moved deeper into Razak's wheel, toward the soldiers, the secrets they chased, and the ancient metal guardians waiting below. We didn't have to go far to find the rest of the Imperials. Their voices drifted from around a bend, tense, hushed, far too alert. Claudia and I exchanged a glance. No more negotiation, no more warnings. We moved. The corridor opened into a collapsed antechamber where 4 soldiers stood behind a makeshift barricade of crates and stone. They spun the instant we stepped inside. "Hostiles." Claudia slammed into them like an avalanche. Her shield rammed the nearest soldier hard enough to fold him over it. I slipped past her as she made the opening, daggers drawn. A sword came at me, sloppy and rushed. I stepped inside its arc, hooked my blade behind the soldier's knee, and dropped him to the floor. Before he could recover, I drove a dagger into the exposed gap in his armor, just deep enough for the paralytic coating to reach his skin. He stiffened, eyes wide, and toppled. Another soldier lunged at me with a long spear. I twisted aside, catching the shaft between both daggers, locking it just long enough to yank him forward and break his balance. With my free hand, I smashed a vial of searing oil against his cuirass. The alchemy hissed instantly, eating into the metal with vicious heat. He screamed, dropping the spear. Claudia swept in and finished him with the flat of her blade. 2 remained. One barreled toward Claudia. The other broke toward me, trying to flank. He didn't make it far. I flicked a flash pellet at the ground. It burst in a brilliant white flare, and he stumbled, blinded. I slipped behind him, crossed my daggers lightly against his throat, not cutting, and tapped his temple with the pommel strike. "Sleep," I whispered as he crumpled. Claudia took down the last soldier in a sharp, efficient exchange of shield and steel. Silence settled again, thick and absolute. "We need to move," Claudia said as she wiped her blade clean. I nodded, giving my blades a quick check. We pushed deeper into Razak's wheel. The air grew colder. The stone hummed faintly, as though something ancient was stirring beneath it. We reached a circular chamber, wide and hollow, filled with dormant mechanisms. At least, I thought they were dormant, until one twitched. A faint metallic click rang through the chamber, sharp and deliberate, sending a prickle up my arms. Then another answered it, then several more, snapping it open in rapid succession. Hatches slid apart along the walls and floor, vents yawning wide as if the ruin itself had drawn a breath. From within, dormer spiders emerged, unfolding from the pipes and hidden conduits, brass limbs extending with mechanical grace as they dropped to the stone. One by one, their glassy eyes flared to life, cold and luminous, each fixing on us with unblinking precision. Claudia exhaled, long and slow. "Here we go." The first spider lunged. I rolled aside, daggers flashing. My blade sliced into the joint of its forward leg. Sparks flew. No blood. No pain for them to feel. No poison to take hold. Just metal. Fine. No poison. Then heat. I smashed a vial of corrosive fire against its back. The mixture ate into the plating instantly, melting through the metal. The spider screeched in that grinding mechanical voice before collapsing. 2 rushed Claudia. She met them head-on, her sword cutting through one while her shield took the other's strike. I slipped behind the remaining one and drove both daggers deep into the gap between its back plates, severing the internal tension cables. It dropped. Then the floor rumbled. Claudia's head snapped toward me. "Saren, I feel it." The spider scattered as something massive rolled into view, then unfolded. A dwarven sphere. It loomed taller than I expected, forcing me to tilt my head back as its razor-edged arms extended open. A narrow vertical slit on its head brightened, its visual sensor locking onto me. Behind it, another sphere rolled in, plates unfolding with a sharp, hissing clatter. "Stay fast," Claudia warned. I didn't need telling twice. The first sphere lunged at me, spinning its blades. I dropped into a slide, daggers scraping sparks off its lower plating as it passed overhead. The cut barely scratched it. Constructs don't bleed. Constructs don't flinch. Claudia intercepted the second sphere, her shield ringing with the impact like a smith bell. I yanked a vial of crackle powder from my belt. This one wasn't a toxin, merely a burst of raw, violent energy. Perfect. The first sphere spun at me again. I hurled the vial under its core. The powder detonated in a brilliant mesh of lightning surging up its frame. The sphere spasmed, its rotation ceasing for a single precious second, which was just enough. I leapt in, jammed one dagger into the seam at its neck joint, braced, and ripped downward, severing the main conduit. Sparks erupted in a violent burst. The sphere's visual sensor flickered, dimmed, and it collapsed. "Saren!" Claudia shouted. I spun toward her, and froze. The doorway behind her darkened, filled with something enormous rising to its full height. A dwarven centurion, towering, armored, every plate humming with power. Steam vented from its shoulder ports in a roar. Its hammer arm slammed into the stone floor, leaving a crater in the impact. "Oh, lovely," I breathed. "They kept a centurion." Claudia raised her shield, jaw tightening. "Got a plan?" I twirled my daggers once, heart pounding. Not yet. The centurion's visual sensor ignited like the heart of a forge, locked onto us. The centurion steamed, flooding the chamber with warmth and fog. Heat prickled across my skin, instinct forcing me back a step. Claudia didn't move. She braced, shield raised, shoulders squared in that immovable way of hers. Her bear, who she fondly called Mauler, surged from the ether at her call. A massive, spectral form solidifying into flesh and fur beside her. Its roar ricocheted through the chamber, a challenge no machine would ever understand, but it didn't need to. It charged anyway. "Buy me time," I shouted, already moving. Claudia's answer was a wordless battle cry as she and Mauler plunged forward. The centurion reacted with terrifying speed, its hammer arm sweeping out in a broad arc. Claudia ducked beneath it, barely, but the blow caught Mauler full in the ribs. The beast tumbled across the stone with a pained grunt, but rolled back to its feet, growling low. I circled to the flank, daggers drawn, keeping light on the balls of my feet as the construct pivoted with that unnatural, perfectly balanced movement. No wasted motion, no hesitation, and no weakness my poisons could exploit. Fine, I had other tricks. The centurion stomped once, hard. The ground shuddered. Claudia staggered. Mauler skidded sideways. I used the moment to sprint in, but a burst of blistering steam erupted from the centurion's shoulder vents. I cursed and threw myself into a slide, skimming under the cloud, feeling the heat lick across my armor. I came up behind the machine, daggers ready, and struck for a seam beneath the backplating. Sparks flew. My blade barely nicked the surface. Damn it. The centurion twisted with impossible precision, its hammer already descending. I threw myself clear as it slammed the ground where I'd been standing, stone bursting into shards. Claudia intercepted the follow-through, shield raised. The force drove her to one knee, but she held, always holding. "Go!" she barked through gritted teeth. I didn't waste the opening. I flicked a vial from my belt, this one filled with a vicious, shimmering blue fluid. Not poison, dissolution compound. Alchemical acid potent enough to chew through tempered Dwemer alloy. if given the chance. I vaulted onto the broken stone of an old pillar, using the extra height to launch myself at the machine. The Centurion shifted, too slow to fully adjust. I crashed onto its shoulder plating, fingers scrambling for purchase. It bellowed its horrible, grinding roar and began to spin. Oh, no you don't. I slammed the vial down into the vent cluster behind its head. The glass shattered. The compound hissed violently, bubbling as it ate through metal. Steam geysered around me, scorching hot. Claudia saw it. "Saren, jump!" I pushed off an instant before the Centurion's arm swept upward, rolling in the air and landing hard beside Mahler. The beast huffed, nudged my shoulder once as if asking if I still lived. "Still alive," I said quietly, "working on staying that way." The Centurion staggered, gears grinding as the corrosion spread. But it wasn't enough to stop it. Not yet. Claudia charged again, striking for the knee joint. Her blade bit deep, deeper than mine could, and the machine lurched, balance compromised. "There!" she shouted. "Hit the seam while it's low." I didn't think. I ran. Mahler slammed into its opposite flank, claws raking metal, forcing it further off balance. The Centurion reeled, dropping to one knee with a thunderous crash. I leapt, both daggers drawn, landing on the exposed rear joint. A vulnerable gap, finally. I drove one blade into the opening and wedged it hard, forcing the plating apart. The second dagger I used as a lever, jamming it deeper into the primary rotation gear beneath. The mechanism shrieked, metal ground against metal, teeth snapping as the joint failed. The Centurion spasmed once, violently, then collapsed, its massive frame crashing forward in a plume of dust. The light slowly dimmed, the metal creaking as it already started to cool. Silence rang in my ears. Claudia approached, catching her breath, resting a hand on the bear's broad back as it panted. "You good?" I yanked my dagger free from the ruined joint, shaking out my hand. "Define good." She smiled, small, tired, real. "Alive?" "Barely." Mahler snorted, which I decided to interpret as agreement. But the chamber wasn't quiet for long. Deep in the ruin, something groaned, old gears turning, ancient pressures shifting, mechanisms waking. Too many. Claudia and I exchanged a look. "Move?" I said. "Move," she confirmed. We left the Centurion's corpse cooling behind us as we sprinted toward whatever waited deeper in Razak's wheel. The deeper we ventured into Razak's wheel, the more it felt as though the ruin itself watched us. The halls thrummed with renewed power, Dwemer machinery stirring after ages of sleep, and each breath of steam echoing through the pipes seemed almost anticipatory. Claudia walked beside me, Mahler padding behind with bored impatience. The three of us had been exploring ruins like this since before we could swing blades properly. But this, Razak's wheel, it felt different, bigger, older, almost alive. We reached the doorway at last, a circular chamber overlooking a deep pit of turning gears. A brass console waited at the edge, its surface carved with Dwemer glyphs in 3 precisely shaped recesses. Our final destination.
Moment of truth?
Claudia asked, pulling out the Mundus key, the first one we'd recovered from an altar. I nodded and withdrew the other 2, the Arbus key and Aetherius key. Even in my hands they vibrated faintly, humming in alignment with one another, as though Razak himself were guiding them. Together, we fit all 3 into the console. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a pulse of light rippled across the engravings, flowing through the grooves like molten gold. Machinery above and below us awakened with deep metallic groans, and somewhere, far beneath our feet, something massive began to turn, clicking into place for the first time in eras. The platform rotated, lining up perfectly with the sealed doorway across the chasm. With a hiss of ancient steam, the door slid open. Behind it lay the vault. Claudia let out a low breath.
All right, Zarin. Let's see if your beloved Dwemer have left us something shiny or something dangerous.
Perhaps both? I couldn't help a faint smile. We stepped inside. The vault was enormous, lined with half-finished machines, discarded parts, and sketches pinned to the walls. Notes scrawled in Razak's angular hand covered every surface. Diagrams of construct anatomy, theories on tonal architecture. Drafts of designs far beyond ordinary spiders and spheres. At the center of the vault lay a table strewn with blueprints in a single empty mold. My heart kicked. The missing cog. This was it, the piece Razak had never finished. His masterpiece stalled only because his final component had never been forged. Claudia hauled the mold to an active smelting chamber.
Let's get him his thrice-damned cog, shall we?
Together we coaxed the machinery to life, cranking tonal levers, aligning heat vents, channeling steam into the mold. When we poured the molten alloy, it glowed like liquid fire, swirling with faint geometric patterns. Dwemer metal always feels like it remembers being alive. Once cooled, the cog shone with a brilliance unlike anything I'd ever handled. Claudia handed it to me.
Go on. Finish what Razak started.
I approached the central apparatus. A half-constructed frame of brass and crystalline inlays perched atop a dais of rotating rings. Razak's opus. With steady hands, I slotted the cog into the final gear assembly. The ruin shuddered. Light exploded from the dais, throwing Claudia and I backward. I hit the floor hard, vision swimming, gears screaming and steam vents hissing all around. Claudia was up first, sword drawn, ready to meet some monstrous Dwemer titan brought to life by our meddling. But what rose from the light was not a titan. It was small. A dwarven spider, unlike any I had ever seen. Sleek, elegant, its plating etched with the same geometric patterns that had glowed on the cog. It landed softly, legs clicking with delicate precision, its crystalline core glowing like a heartbeat. Claudia tensed, then froze when the spider didn't attack. I raised my hand, asking her to pause. Then it turned toward me, Its lenses narrowed, its posture shifted, hesitant, as though evaluating. Then it lowered itself, dipping into a smooth, graceful bow. A bow. To me. Claudia stared, mouth slightly open. By the 8, I think it likes you. My own breath caught. Slowly, I extended a hand. The spider leaned forward and pressed its chilled metal frame against my fingertips. A simple touch, brief, but in it I felt awareness, recognition, even trust. Claudia sheathed her blade with a disbelieving laugh. Looks like Razak's opus chose its master. I shook my head, voice soft. Not master. The spider clicked once, almost inquisitive. Companion, I said softly. The spider clicked once. It tilted its head, acknowledging, maybe even agreeing. Standing there, surrounded by centuries-old dreams and machinery, I finally understood. Razak hadn't been just trying to build a better spider. He wasn't crafting a weapon or a tool. He was trying to create life. A construct that could think, react, decide. Not just excavate or strike on command. Even now, I couldn't tell if it was meant for battle, or if its purpose was something far more complex. And because of us, that purpose had finally taken form.